welcome Ephrat to the cheesy podcast that is doing it for attention. Typically hosted by Luke, less commonly hosted by me. And for those that aren't aware of Ephrat, who I think we met on the customer success leadership panel, right? On the
Yeah, I think so.
that was it. And kind of what really was fascinating is when you were talking about the journey you've been on, and actually the team and the focus you've absorbed, which is what I'd love to hear a bit more about, and I'm sure other people want to hear more about today. But for those that aren't aware, Ephrat leads enterprise sales and customer success at Bring, and I'm sure I can share something in the post at some point. And I'll also share a link to the Customer Success Leadership Collective because that is like a decent community for leaders that are looking to share best practice and understand kind of what the wild world of CS is doing. But yeah, I guess over to you, Ephrat. What you said on the call that we had was really interesting, and your journey's been fascinating. But yeah, I guess kind of bring us up to speed on what's got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I have a quite an interesting journey for sure, and I'm not your typical sales leader who grew up as an AE or a BDR and then moved forward or move upwards toward leadership, etc. I actually grew up in customer success, and if you think about it even further down the line, I grew up at retail, so I don't even come from your traditional SaaS background. I actually worked for our customers' side for a really long time. So Bring is a retail tech company. Essentially, I mean, logistics, supply chain. We handle loads of retailers and one of the biggest names out there in the industry. So for me to make that leap, first of all, was the one big leap that I took. Is from the retail side of the business, from the more traditional industry, from the industry you're trying to disrupt into the SaaS world. That was the biggest leap, and that took me a really long time. First of all, to understand that I want to do it and that I'm ready for it, and then it's almost like switching careers because I was already a manager. I was already managing retail stores and inventory and supply chain, but then convincing SaaS companies that they should rely on me and my implicit experience really makes a lot of sense for them was a big deal. And the moment I did that, I started growing up in the Bring customer success side. That became real clear that I can generate tons of impact when it comes to just customer facing interactions and creating relationships. And the Bring sales side of thing was a bit struggling, or they needed a fresh new leader. And I felt really natural moving to that side. I mean, people always say moving to sales is moving to the dark side. I think it's the same side. I think that CS and sales are really on the same side. If anything, they are handling almost the same challenges. They're handling almost the same business problems. They are creating that level of trust and rapport with customers. So I don't see it as a huge leap. I know there's that classic sales CS tension that everybody likes to talk about.
We'll dive into, I think.
But yeah, but in essence, I don't believe that's such a big shift in mind. And for me, it's been all about these, skills that I can transfer from this side to the other.
How did you find that? So your journey is fascinating because you came from completely outside SaaS, but identified the expertise you can bring to a software company servicing a space you've worked in, enabled you to position yourself very strong. And you joined Bring as a customer success manager, right? So you came in
Yes, I
managing
see.
client accounts,
Yes.
and the amount of people we get reaching out that want to go through a similar journey, um, and go from teaching to SaaS or from public sector to SaaS or from any sector to SaaS. What did you do, or what would you recommend to people that are trying to make that jump? Because it's something so many people are trying to do at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important question because there's always room for you to move to that tech SaaS world. There's always room, regardless of what you do today. There is always a skill or a capability or an expertise that you accumulated through your life cycle, through your career, that you can then harness and shift into the SaaS world. And I would go with the immediate suspect. So, as you said, as an example, someone's a teacher. They know a lot about education and they know a lot about teaching and learning. So if you think about a teacher moving to a SaaS platform that focuses on organizational learning or focuses on the future of edtech, so these shifts from the industry into the SaaS industry that handles or tries to sell into your industry gives you a really, really strong advantage against people who are coming from traditional SaaS backgrounds or just shifting softwares essentially. You are the market. And when I first joined Ring, I was an IC for sure, but it was, and I was really grateful, by the way, to be an IC. It's such a relief after being in management to just handle your own book of business and not worry about what others, team members are concerned. You don't need to do a lot of, cracking your head open with strategy and team leadership. So I was kind of relieved for a while to do that. But people immediately recognized that I know a lot about what we're selling, and I have been there in the warehouses unpacking boxes. So I know a lot about supply chain needs. So I can tell that story and I can talk the same language as my customers, which made me a really strong candidate for CS, to be fair. When I was trying to apply for different types of SaaS industry platforms, for example, cybersecurity, that I was definitely um, behind. I was definitely not with the right skills or qualifications. So I tried to explain why I think I have leadership skills and I'm a quick learner and I'm extremely tech savvy and I know how to talk to people and I have great relationship skills and I can work in multi international organizations and multi regional cultural differences, etc. That did not really pull the weight and didn't really get me the roles because there were always candidates who came with these very much needed industry expertise. But if you think about SaaS world today, there are companies trying to sell into every sector out there. Every sector out there. So think about the sector you're working for, if it's a more traditional sector and not a tech sector, and think about the companies who are trying to sell to you. Those are your natural immediate suspects of who you should be applying to. So start there and then highlight your soft skills, which really matter in today's world. It's all about the way you interact, the way you tell a story, the way you smile, the way you show up, the way you talk about data and metrics. It's all there. But those are, I would say, this is the second phase. If you want to get in front of a recruiter, first of all, come with this strong industry knowledge, wherever that thing is.
I was going to say, did you get much kickback from other sectors? But you clearly did. You mentioned that before. What brought Bring to the front of your to your attention? Were you aware of them, or did you spend time researching businesses that are in your space?
Definitely. I took a really long time, and I think a job search is not your traditional, just apply to a bunch of jobs on LinkedIn and see what catches. You have to be very, very prescriptive and precise on where you focus your efforts. And it is a full-time job. And I was doing it while working, but I dedicated loads of hours to it, to research, to reading articles about retail tech, to understanding the ecosystem of, okay, these are the names of the companies, this is what they do. I didn't want to be caught off guard when a recruiter calls me and asks me, have you heard about Bring? And I would be like, oh yes, I've heard about you, and that was it. I wanted to give that, second line of actually being aware of what the company does. And I think for a recruiter, that was already giving me a couple of points there. So I invested a lot of time researching and understanding these unique qualifications or unique positions of these companies. And also, I think, you and I met with in a networking event. There is no such thing as too much networking. There is no such thing. I mean, most of the jobs don't get posted. You will not find your next career move probably on LinkedIn. You're probably going to hear about it through a connection or a friend or a colleague or someone who's moved jobs and remembers you fondly and will talk to you about something. And that something is not something until 1 year later it is something, and then you'll get the job. So it's always about building that continuous connection within the ecosystem you work with and getting super familiar with everything new that comes out. So if you think about it, now that I'm in sales, I speak in sales terminology, but it is very much like building a pipeline of sales. So you're creating a lot of connections and ripples through the ecosystem that you work with. And then you build on the fact that only one of these opportunities will be closed. So you prepare yourself for tons of negative answers and processes that will end with a no. and failed opportunities. But that's part of the job. I mean, only one of 10 will be successful. That means you'll have to endure through nine unsuccessful ones and be okay with it. Pick yourself up, keep going, and then the 10th one will come. So it's all about stamina and grit in my book. And I will not lie, it took me a really long time. It took me, I think, 6 or 7 months of very extensive works, a lot of interviews, a lot of home assignments, a lot of frustrations, a lot of disappointments, some tears for sure. But it ended with the right result for me and the accurate results for me.
Yeah, and it's led us to kind of where you are now, which is fantastic. And the other transition that some people struggle with, especially if they've had a very prolonged career in a given sector away from SaaS, is potentially, and I don't want to get into numbers, but salary expectations. So if you've achieved a leadership or a senior position within the retail space, whilst there are certainly transferable skill, expertise, and knowledge, you're not going to walk in at the same level of seniority, which can mean salary expectations need to be considered. And again, it's a conversation we have with candidates, which is you have some real transferable knowledge, but you're on 70 plus extras because you're a director of XYZ. You're coming in as a CSM, which is a very important role, but it doesn't carry those salary bandings. Did you have to accept that as part of your transition, the kind of sidestep?
Definitely. And I saw it as going down to go up again. And you have to recognize that you are going down a little bit. You need to prove yourself. You're starting from a low position, like almost a junior in a way, because you're starting as an IC. You do have that. If you come in with all of your ego, you will not get the right job. I mean, if you're coming in with, hey, I've done this and that, and I have a glorious career behind me, then the answer would be, okay, so keep going in that career. That's all. But you're trying to shift careers and you're trying to prove your worth to a new industry where you have no reputation and you have no um, merits of things that you've already done, then you have to give it a couple of years to prove yourself out. And if you're as good as you think you are, and I almost knew, and as I said, I was relieved not to be managing a team, but 18 months later, I was already re-managing a team because it's just who I am. And I'm a natural manager, or I enjoy managing so much that the moment the position became available, I was the natural candidate. But I needed to put my ego aside and take into account that I might spend a good 3 4 years as an IC with a lower band of salary or maybe less of benefits. Uh, you know, keep this your meal budget or your personal company card out of it. If you're trying to make a career move, this is a move for life. Don't think about your immediate benefit. Think about it as an investment in your education. That's what I really think, and then you'll grow from there. So you're learning a new industry. You need to pay a tuition fee just for a couple
That's
of
a really good
years.
point. I'm grabbing that. That's going to be out there somewhere at some point. And you were clearly as good as you thought you would be because your progression has been fantastic. You've gone from IC to team lead to really leading the function. How? Because the last 4 years in CS have evolved quite significantly and gone from maybe a relationship-led role to picking up commercial accountability to the implementation and usage of technology to support with. How have you found, yes, absorbing customer success and the evolution of customer success over those years?
Yeah, great question. It began with CS becoming more strategic. That was the buzzword 4 years ago. We're trying to get more strategic. We're trying to get in front of customers and talk about their business outcomes and deliver value. And I remembered I was interviewing at the time, every single person, every single candidate kept saying value, value, value. It was all about the value. It's all about the value. That was then. I strongly agree it's still about the value, but I would add a small word, which is quantifiable value, business value. And you can say that a platform has loads of value and it's very beneficial to use and it brings tons of good outcomes and mainly saves a lot of platforms or like software out there say that they save time or they give you visibility. Those are no longer things that are important as quantifying those to pounds in your pocket, dollars in your P&L. Those are most important now to customers. So that shift, I think, is both for CSMs and salespeople. Um, and the more that sales is focused on bringing those new logos into play, then CS needs to get more commercial around existing accounts and making sure that not only they see the value, that they are able to repeatedly, consistently measure it and understand the impact of you being a partner with them. And it's not just you, the technology, it's you, the person as well. So you have to cultivate your own skills and your own expertise to make sure that you deliver the right level of engagement from customers. So I would say there is, I think, a big transition from trying to be strategic partners, trying to be the voice of the customer, to actually being a lot more proactive and a lot more even challenging to customers because you're trying to get a seat at the table. You will not get a seat at the table if you're just saying yes to everything the customer is telling you. And you will have to be challenging them. You have to be in a more of a capacity of someone who knows better than them their own business, which is extremely challenging. And it's a hard act for sure. But I feel is where we are going. And I'm not even talking about the AI revolution, which is definitely shifting the way CS is being done and shifting the skills that us humans have to have when managing customers through these platforms. So it's not just about saving us a lot of time and money through all these tools that do things for us, but it's more around what type of skills we need to have on top of these tools to be able to leverage them in the right way, to get more personal, to get more precise, to get more consultative with our customers.
How have you found, and I don't want to get into specifics, like you're not hitting name and shame, but have you found people have struggled with that development of customer success and some people have flourished? And is there anything that you would say to people, here's something to read, think about, watch, listen to, or focus on that's going to really help you as CS continues in this optimizing direction?
Yeah, definitely. I felt that a lot of people coming from technical backgrounds were struggling with that shift because a lot of CS functions were borderline support. And a lot of CS people were talking about product expertise, but effectively in their day to day were solving bugs and incidents for their customers. And that was really encouraged and was not frowned upon at all. It was actually considered a good CSM, right? Because you know the product that well, that you can help the customer debug it and help them gain more usability. Usability is indeed a target, but that's a lagging indicator, I feel, or the more they use is not necessarily the more business value they'll have. So you have to, these metrics are disjoint in essence. So people moving from the technical spec of things, or technical people, I would say, are moving towards professional services, technical account managers, these types of roles, while CS need to be definitely shifting their mindset toward the commercial. And to think toward the commercial, not necessarily not all size fits all, and you don't have the right people who can actually do all of that. So either you adapt and change and learn some new skills, or reawaken the salesperson inside you, or you're probably gonna find yourself looking for something else just because you would not be happy. And I feel like, if you're shying away from commercial discussions and you feel like talking about money is not something you enjoy at all, then you should be seriously thinking about other roles that are more technical, and more of a hero capacity of coming in and saving customers rather than challenging them and actually being change agents for them, which is a tougher role to play for sure. So yes, to your question, I do feel that some people have needed to readjust course given
And is there anything you've
these
brought to
changes.
your teams or your employees that's helped them make that jump and transition? Maybe there are some that were on the cusp, on the edge, uncertain, and you've given them just the right amount of intel.
Yeah, that's a good question. I felt like the ones that were struggling with that a little bit more is where I just needed to reiterate and model the new way of thinking about things. So if I saw them or they saw their time being spent more and more on the technical side, on the firefighting side of things, and trying to be heroes for customers, I always point that out. And I feel like just putting a mirror in front of someone saying, hey, I know this feels really good and you feel like you're genuinely helping, you are, but that's not your job right now. You're actually doing disservice to this customer by not focusing on all these other things. And in an ideal organization, you would have job roles or definition of people doing all of these things. But CS traditionally is generalists, right? We were forced to do everything and anything. But the more we get or evolve on the commercial side, through strategic commercial side, and being a business partner and not just a value partner, I really feel that that's the way to go. So it's all about modeling to help make that transition and help them prioritize their time. So when I, on my one-on-ones, if I saw that someone is spending a lot of time in the wrong areas, I would ask them to almost let's go over your calendar and see how much time you're spending and making sure you spend your things on the right things.
Then you mentioned you, or we mentioned the dark side. So you led CS, grew the CS team, and then absorbed sales, which feels quite natural as you've come from a fairly commercial background, but rarely does someone lead both a sales and CS function so closely. So I guess there's two sides to this is how was that? And then it'd be interesting to understand what you focused on because there is this perceptive tug of war between sales and CS, and I think it is in jest for the most part, but many businesses will see them pulling in slightly different directions, both forwards but kind of offshoots of each other. So what led you to want to take on CS and enterprise sales, and how did you find that initially?
Yeah, to be fair, it wasn't on my career trajectory. I've never
Yeah.
put running sales as a thing I want to do. If anything, I was thinking about back then, I was thinking about maybe professional services because I wanted to get that broader spectrum of CS into my definition of skills. But I am so glad that I was offered this opportunity to manage the sales team. I felt like coming from CS gave me actually, if you think about it, the best possible, being the best possible candidate in many ways, not in every way, but in many ways. I still had a lot of gaps to catch up, and I was talking earlier about leaving your ego at the door. I needed to do that again because I came into a world where I was already an expert in CS or already knew my day to day, and I was really comfortable there. And I had my list of people, tools, resources, processes, etc. And then I needed to go to this all new thing where I know really little about how they manage the day to day, really little about how to activate people and how to really engage with the teams. Teams are different on that side, or people are thinking differently. And the way that you interact with customers is really different. I remember the first thing I noticed is that on the sales side, customers are really smiling all the time because you haven't sold to them yet, right? So they don't have any outstanding bug or issue, or they're not disgruntled about anything. They're actually showing up pretty cheerful. But then on that side, you're struggling to get the engagement, where on the customer side, normally you have an ongoing relationship that you can maintain. So I saw the ups and downs or the advantages and disadvantages of each. And I needed to really say, hey, these are the things that I know that I'm bringing to the table. These are definitely transferable skills, managing a team, managing a portfolio, knowing the industry, etc. Me knowing the product actually made a whole lot of difference. Um, a lot of people at sales know maybe less than what CS would know about the qualities of the product, given that they are selling a pitch or they've never actually interacted with the product or they've never seen an actual use. In many cases, I'm not trying to generalize, of course, there's everything from everything, but if you think about the added flavor having a CS person on a sales team brings, and just being able to tell customers' story first-handedly in a very persuasive way, just because I've been there, I've seen that, I know what they're saying about us, I know the challenges they had and how we helped them, is almost a force multiplier for a sales team. So I would argue that CS should be on sales calls all the time. And I believe that they are extremely helpful in getting these stories across in the way that sales cannot, even if they are great storytellers, they can't tell the story the same as someone who's been there, who's actually seen it firsthand. So I feel that's a really strong thing that I brought with me. But as I said, tons of gaps. not hiding it at all. There were loads of things that I know very little on: forecasting, criteria, understanding pipeline generation. How is that done? Normally on the CS side, we don't handle pipeline at all. Pipe gen is not something we worry about. We are somewhere in the end of the customer journey and not the very beginning. So learning all these jargon and all these numbers and
Terminology.
conversion rates from this to that, and getting super familiar with numbers is not something that in B2B classic enterprise CS you really handle. So I needed to, again, put my ego at the door, check in my ego, and just go at it and learn as much as I can.
Now and again. So stepping from CS into the sales side, you- what was your biggest shock in terms of what sales didn't realize about CS, and maybe the counter as well? What did CS not realize about sales? Like what what was the most disjointed aspect you found transitioning between the two?
Wow, that's a hard one, and I hope my team will not catch me on it.
Yeah, not
But
to throw
I
anyone
would
under the bus
say,
here, just
no, I'm genuinely thinking. I feel that there is a lot of friction between those two functions. First of all, because in many organizations there isn't clarity around who owns what type of revenue, and sometimes if both sides are being compensated for the same things, you will see collision of interests, and you will see people working against each other and not in a joint way. So I felt coming from CS there was a lot of frustration from the sales side of CS not doing the right things, and we're not getting the right metrics or benchmarks to be able to sell these stories uh, to new customers. We need to get, like, the QBRs are not good enough, and we don't have the right data coming from it to help us sell. And then, of course, CS is always moaning about sales selling the wrong things and selling the wrong customers, and there is no strong fit, and you're bringing me a customer that is likely to churn. So you're actually throwing a hot potato at me that I can't handle, and if you handle it on your side, we wouldn't be in this problem. So you learn that if you're thinking a little bit from a higher standpoint, you're looking at the whole picture, you will have sales selling deals that shouldn't be selling, because sometimes you just have to hit the number. So you will bend the rules a little bit, and you will maybe ignore tiny product gaps that are there. And that's fine. And CS need to understand that that's healthy friction. It happens sometimes. We cannot avoid it entirely. If you want to see growth, you have to be able to adapt, specifically in SaaS, where the product is not closed and defined in a box, so it can be flexible and move a little bit. The whole secret is communication and ongoing commitment to the same number. So that is what I would say sales would say on the CS side, and the CS would say on sales. The way we try to avoid that is, first of all, making sure comp plans are separated. This is extremely important. So whenever someone asks me about friction between CS and sales, I always ask, talk me through your comp plans. And if we are compensating people for the same things, or we are choosing to compensate only one of them on the same line of revenue, then we are putting them in a fight already. We are already telling them to have friction with each other. And if we are hurting CS compensation with churn, and on the same side making sure that sales sell as much as they can, then we're likely to have deals that are not healthy in the pipeline, and then coming into CS likely to churn. So how do we bridge that? For example, there are a lot of levers you can definitely pull, but one of them is making sure that CS renews the first time and owes the first renewal. So you make sure that they know they need to sell a renewable deal, and a deal that can be more sustainable. So they're not just throwing it over the fence and running away to the next deal. So that's one way to overcome that gap. So those are the biggest things I would say are still a friction point. Um, the way to tackle them is to think about the number as a whole. CS and sales are part of the go-to-market engine of a company. Some of them handle renewals, expansions, and new logos, and all these different areas or different stages of a customer life cycle being handled by different people, but we all are committed to the same company number. So first of all, tying everyone's job into that big number and saying that's our number, and then who owns what exactly, that needs a lot of clarification from leadership to avoid these friction points and someone feeling that they're being stolen their compensation or their ability to earn.
And how do you feel about CS spending time with sales and sales spending time with CS to understand, I guess, the other side? Like we speak to a lot of CSMs who perhaps lack commercial nous, and there are so many great salespeople who I'm sure would be willing to share or spend time with, and vice versa. Is it something you guys do, and how do you feel about not maybe buddying up, but certainly a CSM being a bit proactive in spending time with an AE to understand that side of the journey and vice versa?
Yeah, I feel like there is, at least when I was in CS, there were a lot of misconceptions around how sales manage their day. And there was a lot of misunderstanding, really, and lack of clarity as to what do sales do all day. And I ran a funny exercise the other day with, I was giving a lecture to a part of my organization that is not sales, like I think it was engineering, finance, and I asked them, do you know, if you're an AE, what do you do all day? And they literally did not know. Because on the CS side, you're like, okay, so you go on customer calls, you handle their affairs, you build success plan. On the sales side, you know you're responsible for bringing new logos, but you don't know how it's done. So for me as a CS leader to start joining a day in the life of an account executive, understanding their challenges, it's really hard work, and it's really frustrating work. If you think about CS, you already have your customers. You will lose some of them, right, to churn and contraction, but normally you would keep them. Sales is all about losing deals more than winning. Like if you have best in class win rates, then let's assume, I don't know, 30%, it still means you're losing the other 70% all the time. So it's a frustrating game to play, and it's very lucrative on the other side. But for a CS person to understand, hey, a lot of these conversations are going to go nowhere or end up I'm going to lose them, and I need to be better at understanding how to lose them fast and how to disqualify them fast. I felt that side of the business was completely unknown to me on the CS side. So learning that is very effective. I agree.
I'm very conscious of time, so we'll try and speed through the last bits. Um, we mentioned about your journey into CS, taking the expertise you've learned from non-SaaS, applying that to your application. Would you apply that to sales in the software world as well? Again, we get loads of salespeople wanting to transition into the world of software, and selling a piece of software, which to all intents and purposes could be a username and password, is very different to selling a tangible product. So someone may be a very competent, successful salesperson. Do you think they can make the leap into software sales with just the sector expertise but no software?
I would argue yes. I would argue that a salesperson is a salesperson at heart. And if you're good at what you do and you're passionate about what you sell, you essentially can sell anything. There are things you need to adapt and change. And you have to understand that software sales is very different than selling a physical product, just from the sense that it is solving a size of the problem that is not necessarily always the same, is not always clearly defined. But if you've sold B2B in the past, so you're a key account manager, even for a bank, I don't know, and you sold these hypothetical values, and you know how to create long-lasting relationships with executives, and you know that in order to sell a deal in a B2B world, you have to get multi-threaded with all sorts of stakeholders. So you already know that. It's only a matter of speaking confidently about the product itself and about its value, which I think is always teachable. You do have to come with some industry level knowledge. So you can't just show up and say, hi, I'm your salesperson for this software, would you like to buy? You have to understand how these people think and what kind of language they speak. But those are all teachable skills. So if I was um, recruiting for an AE right now, I would first and foremost look at the personality. and the motivation of that person and the things and how they communicate effectively through a screen or when I meet them face to face. Those are the essentials of the essentials. Then I would build a second layer of how professional they look, how quick they are on their feet. If I, throw a curveball at them, would they be able to respond quickly? Those are the things that are very much soft skills. So to your question, if someone sold something in the retail world and now wants to move to sell software, they will need to show a lot of adapting, but I think it's definitely manageable. It's definitely manageable.
So it'll be something that people are really keen to hear. So again, we see the same types of conversation. How do I make the move? And it's not dissimilar to what you mentioned before. Take what you've got, the softer skills, overlay some of the sector expertise, and then I guess, like you mentioned, find the businesses that are going to be relevant to you. Cool. I think that's kind of most things that I wanted to ask you. It's been kind of really interesting to kind of hear your journey. There is one question to ask, which we ask everyone, and that question is: if you could instantly master one skill, professional or non-professional, what would it be?
If I could take a new skill, what would
Immediately master any skill. The click of a finger, you now are a master of doing anything in the world. It could be supporting your professional life. It could be something completely different. What would it be?
well, I have a huge fear of heights and I'm really bad on water as well, which really limits my ability to do things. So if I could overcome that, that would be great. That on the personal level, that would really clear a lot of things for me because I'm afraid of heights and afraid of high waters. So not
Right,
being able
okay.
to go on a cruise. But on the professional level, I think I'd like to get better at saying no in an assertive way. Not to customers, that's actually not hard for me, but more for peers, colleagues, friends. I feel that's where I struggle. Being a people person and being in front of customers all day, I feel like I a lot of times aim to please and I try to do less of that.
She's a real depth of answer for the best
Yeah,
one we've had so far. I think the previous ones were somewhat lacking, but awesome. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to share? Anything you wanted to put out there? Otherwise, I think we're kind of approaching the 45-minute mark, which is
no,
plenty of time.
all for me. I really appreciate your time, Ron, today. The questions were really interesting and led me to sharing my journey. So I'm really happy I got to do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, no, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll keep you posted as and when we get this out on our LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.